Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Do you ever remember the first time you heard about a mass shooting? A deranged murderer went through a crowded place, began pulling the trigger, and rapidly killed and wounded a number of people. It was a breathtaking shock, even to the person who was not present there, who just heard of this demonic event. But now we are desensitized. Every day we hear it. And what the politicians do, they think of diverting it by clouding it, by talking extraneous things. The society is unwilling to face the reality that this society is itself responsible for the mass murders. They are the creators of the Frankenstein, politicians, so-called psychologists, and society as a whole. Names of the places that have burdened our memories like Columbine, Virginia Tech, Stoneman Douglas, Sandy Hook, Uvalde, and the list keeps on growing. According to the mass shooting tracker, the horrifying Uvalde shooting was 252nd time this year. So 1 year, just half a year rather, 252 times mass shootings have taken place in USA alone. And I'm not talking about the shootings in other places. But mass shooting psychology is the same. 252 times. The shooters have killed four or more people in one outburst. And likely to be that this year, if this thing goes on, we shall have terrible, terrible results, and we might cross 700 mark by the end of the December if the same thing goes on. Imagine 700, even if you count 5 people killed. Would it be better? Or would it in any way be accountable to the society as a whole? The problem is when the politicians are face to face with this, they talk only of one thing. The leftists claim that these Americans can purchase firearms. But Americans have purchased firearms for the centuries. And now statistically, the percentage of the householders owning guns is actually at a 40-year low because many states have the controls and everything. So gun ownership does not explain why mass shootings are increasing. The leftist agenda to ban gun ownership, regardless of what the statistics are. But the conservatives also do not have an answer to the mass shooting either. The worst thing that can happen to a parent is to see that his or her son or daughter have murdered their class fellows, innocent, who have no fault of theirs except for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they are horrified at the monster they have produced. But they forget it's they who are responsible for the monster. So the way to understand mass shooting is to understand the mass shooter. And the only way to understand the mass shooter is to understand what has influenced his mind right from the beginning. This means you have to understand his family or the lack of family. And if you look at it, mass shooters are almost, there are different times, there are some deviations, but almost always explosively made from unsound families, more often fatherless, rebellious against authority of all kinds, susceptible to influences of violence. And the Institute of Family Studies research shows that boys raised by single mother are twice likely to end up as delinquents as compared to have those boys who have good relations with their fathers. The latest shooter, Salvador Ramos, did not have a good relation with his father, was rebellious, cared strongly about his access to internet, loved violent games. Both his parents had criminal histories, and he lived with his grandmother. He had screaming matches with her so intense that the police was called to intervene. He reportedly left and was kicked out when the mother discontinued their internet service. He moved in his grandparents. His grandfather also had a criminal history. And so one day what happens? He complained to his mother, and then ultimately he leaves them, kills them, steals their shop. So becomes a mass murderer of school children, 18 years. His future, like everybody child, would depend on love, instruction, discipline given by the parents. He had no love. His father did not stop him from disrespecting. So he argued with his grandmother over a telephone bill, shot her in the face, stole her vehicle and went and started shooting. Ask the nation what it's doing. Make sense of these senseless shootings. We have got to face the uncomfortable truth that turmoil at home is all too often responsible for turmoil we end up seeing spill onto the streets and the schools. I read an article by Bedford Wilcox, Sons of Divorcees, School Shooters. The social scientific evidence about the connection between violence and the broken homes cannot be more clear. If you look at it, I was watching the Tucker Carlson interviewing Judge Jennings Pinero, and he asked, has a systematic study been done? And the judge says that the prosecutors don't want to answer such questions. But many such studies have been done, and mass shooters have always been without father. They are fatherless boys. And secondly, they are addicted to violent entertainment. Start with the boy, take away his father, sit him in the front of the screen the whole day, feed him porn, feed him an endless stream of content, give him no moral formation, no guidance, no compatibility. Give him drugs. Isolate him. The result, a mass shooter. So the society and the broken families and the concept of single mothers and the single parent family is the most idiotic thing to have happened, and that is responsible for the mass shooters. But would the politicians care? Would they do something to ensure that the families are not broken? Would they try to control the violent movies and see that they are not watched by the under 14 or under 18? They have neither you see what happens is these kids have neither authoritative guidance nor companionship. They take illegal and prescription drugs. They are isolated. And I can tell you, North America is full of parents who have not motivated their children and left out wide open for someone else to do. Who someone else is? The drug peddler, the gambler, the narcotic dealer, and so on. So one major influence is not motivation, is the video games. It's an influence. It's not a motivation is the parents, broken parents. So look at the movies they watch, the games they watch. They are assault, rape, and murder. The Columbine killer played Doom and Quake. The Sandy Hook killer played Call of Duty, Dead or Alive, Grand Theft Auto. And Ulvatic killer played Call of Duty and Fortnite. And parents know that a huge percentage of teenage boys have huge amounts of the video games. But do they check them? Majority of the parents are more concerned with earning dollars, so they dismiss these video games as harmless entertainment. And secondly, This privacy, so-called privacy. The child is in the room doing something, so let's not violate his privacy. So the parents are relinquishing their responsibility. And the result is that they are nurturing Frankensteins, murderers, shooters. Much can be written about violent video games, but it's enough to say that you live in a society, or rather you have created a society where millions of males, teenagers, and even older are spending hours a day playing games like Amnesia, Bulletstorm, Dead Space, The Evil Within, Friday the 13th, Hatred, Hellblade, Kindergarten Killer, The Last of Us, Left 4 Dead, Manhunt, Mortal Kombat, Police Shoot, Silent Hill, Soma, Splatterhouse, and so on. The list is endless. And what happens? A child or a teenager who watches these games for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, he thinks that these are the real heroes. Look at the goal, look at the bloodshed. That sends the adrenaline rushing through the body. And then there's no parent to look after him, to guide him, to nurture him. And there's no love to begin. So twisted in violence, in massively popular video games, is a part of the twisted violence of our entertainment. What do you think hyper realistic, enticing, addicting, gratuitous bodily violence does in those teenage children who play it over and over again? So it becomes a part of their psyche. Killing is not something horrible. Bloodshed is not something gory, something horrible. But then this is a sign of their bravery, their mature responsibility. What do you think the twisted sex then is doing in the minds of the people? Numerous studies have demonstrated a link between pornography and sexual violence, leading to the bodily violence. And the men, according to psychology today, men who act in an aggressive manner towards women are typically heavy pornography users. I was reading in the Dawn the other day that Pakistani dramas now it's more and more common to beat women. Best actors are doing it. They want to show it. And that's what's going to happen there. What's really happening is that the society is pumping out more and more video games and they're violent. They're twisted internet forums. There's a dehumanizing pornography. The dark movies and the violent things of the unless king is pumping out young male sex perverts and mass murders. This is the reality. So the reality is the violent games. The reality is the fatherless children. The reality is their isolation, their desolation, their exposure to the drug peddlers, the prostitution, and the criminal. There have always been a certain number of fatherless children in North America. But today, the fatherless are much more numerous and indulging in the far worse mind-destroying temptations within. And when massacres happen, what happens? They immediately say, the problem is a gun. The gun lobby, the political parties. But then, do you remember that the young Americans always used to have hunting rifles in their racks and their trucks in the school parking lots? Gun restrictions have increased in USA in the last 40 years, and so have the mass murders. So there is a direct correlation. In fact, there is nothing. You own gun or you don't gun. If you are going to shoot, you are going to shoot. The fact is that there is no big advance in the firearm lethality compared to the citizens. And one can always hear gun legislation, but what has happened is the culture, the attitude, as a concept of the family. There's more emphasis on single parent family, and people go gaga. How brave this woman is to be the single mom. Single mom becomes a sort of an icon And that's a tragedy of the civilization. The real secret reason we have lost the art of raising our children. And that is why some of them in extreme cases are growing more and more frequently, ending up as murder. Tom Klebold, Wayne Harris, Salvador Ramos, Peter Lenza, and fathers of other mosques may not have raised their children to become monsters, but someone did. And there is a spirit of hatred, murder, and evil in the world. And evil is on the video games, as I said, the dealers of the drugs, and others. That spirit is worse now than ever. Then the lack of ethics. In the schools also, the ethics are not taught. The teachers themselves are corrupt. The sex maniacs who become teachers, and there have been cases like that. I was talking about, I listened to some friends, and there's a project called the Violence Projects. And according to that Violence Project research, if you compare the shootings today with what happened in 70s, the indiscriminate mass shootings are 6 times more common now. People don't want to acknowledge the clear and the present reality. Even after a dead-eyed 18-year-old spends 80 minutes playing demonic music and murdering children, what do you expect him to do? He has seen it on the screen. Why not go and do it really? And still you wonder, why are these things happening? They are happening because of you. Because children's minds are under attack. Because the spirit and the ethics and the sense, empathy, compassion, that is dead. The children, innocent, have been converted into killing robots. They're just as real as you and me with personalities and goals. But they have been manipulated. And that is fact. And ignoring the truth is radically irrational. But that's what's happening. The political leaders don't want to do it because the single moms are a huge voting bloc. So why annoy them? If they are addicted to violent games, then they are amenable to be persuaded. Give them some money so that they vote in their favor. So all this is basically a game being manipulated by the political leaders who don't want to do something. And this is the reason that the percentage of the Americans owning guns has declined, but the mass shooting has increased. And then don't forget, there's always a cause and effect. And that's what's happening. There's a cause for every action. And the cause for our action is rejection of the family, the rejection of the fatherhood, the rejection of the ethics. And the result is what we saw. And don't forget, when they don't study, they are not disciplined, they are empty minds. And empty mind is devil's workshop. A mind not filled with compassion, empathy, human feelings, which is a fertile ground for the perverted beings. So demons are hiding, and they come and have a full play. And our society is unraveling. The problem is that the mass shooting can be traced back to how we raise our children. And we have forgotten the art of raising our children. That's the object lesson we have got to learn now. Already we have lost a lot of time. Let's not lose any further. Thank you.